second ever live stream on YouTube. Hopefully this will go better than the first one. Now my battery's all charged and I'm looking forward to trying this out. In this live stream, I will be painting on journals, just as I did in the other one. I have quite a few journals to do for our spring launch, almost summer now. And yeah, so this is oil painting on journals. I will be explaining a bit as we go along, and otherwise, I'm just going to be painting here, and hopefully you can see everything properly. I'll have to adjust a little bit as I go along, and I can see the comments here. If there's anything you wonder about or something, just write to me and I will answer. And let's get this set up. Of course, it won't be. There might be some technical glitches and so on, but I'm just going to try this and let's see how it works. Of course, this will be a video that's going to be out on YouTube on its own anyway, apart from the live stream. So I'm just going to behave as though this is kind of a video that I'm taking, apart from comments and so on. And so I'll just be explaining a little bit and painting. So on this, it started a bit more kind of gray and than I kind of had planned. It's supposed to be kind of spring and we should have some colors into it. We should have some light come in from the side, and so it should actually be quite a lot brighter than it is right now. And my idea was, and I think we're just gonna go and do that right away. Oh, hi there, hi Rania, welcome to the stream. So this time it's going to be longer than yesterday, and I'm hoping to actually be able to paint a few journals and so on. So let's just get right into it. I'm just going to get some of the light color. And what I thought is to get some light in from this side so that it could shine in. And I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look. This is from imagination. I'm just kind of painting and it's kind of happening as I paint. So it's kind of more of a process of discovery than it is having a photo and then getting there as you go along. So it's a very different process. That also means that a lot of landscape painters, especially if you paint from a reference photo, you can kind of start with just shapes and so on, and you can get the colors on. A lot of that I can't do here. If you paint just from imagination, you need things to go off of so that your imagination can be sparked and you can kind of continue. So that's kind of what's happening, is that sometimes I need to be painting quite detailed things that are then going to disappear and are going to be removed again at some other time, just to kind of know how it's going to go. So what I want to do is I want to get this light on top of the trees as well. Let's see here. So if I get some light here and I can just start to get the light everywhere where I want it, and it should look a lot more, it should look a lot brighter pretty quickly than what it does now. So this is one of the things that I really love when I paint, is when the painting is already kind of established and then you just paint the light into the painting. You just have kind of one light color from the sun and you're able to just bathe the landscape in that color. That is just something I really enjoy. If you can hear some water sounds and so on, that's from the lake outside. There's a little bit of wind going on and the snow has gone. It just went, the ice from the lake went like a week ago, or a little bit less than that even. And so now finally we have these sounds again. So yeah, letting the light come in, and I think already it's more possible to see where this is going. And I can actually get this even a little bit closer. Hopefully it's possible to see everything. So I want the light, I don't want to do this everywhere. Maybe here and maybe something over there. It should look natural. This is something I really haven't done before. Hi Joachim, greetings from Germany. Oh, greetings. I was hoping you were gonna stop by. Greetings to you from Germany. It's really nice to have this setup here. Of course, there aren't going to be as many people as I'm not on Instagram, but most people are. But never mind, not important to have a lot of people here. It's just nice that some are joining, and I like this setup. So yeah, let's get the light in from the right and bathe the painting here. So I'm imagining kind of a little bit the darker mood that I often have in my paintings, kind of mixed with a more hopeful light. And I think I'm going to try to do that in all of these paintings for this awakening launch, we are calling it, this time. So still painting the way that I paint, and this kind of darker colors and so on, but mixing that with a more hopeful light that kind of comes in. I always like that in some of the really old National Romantic paintings where you can just have these sunbeams coming in from the side. It's a little bit like that. It's so nice to finally have these summer sounds again. Winter has been really, really long, and the snow didn't melt here until kind of last week, which is not that usual for this area. It ought to melt a little bit for a little bit earlier than that. But finally now, spring has come, and leaves are finally coming out, which is good because I always, since I paint 2 months, 3 months in advance, I'm often painting in the wrong season, and it's nice that nature has kind of caught up with me here. So what I'm thinking is, the more and more we're doing this, the easier it's going to be to see where the sun comes in. So maybe a little bit up here as well. So just a little, few sunbeams that come in. So for those of you who are just joining, I painted this journal in the way that I usually do, quite dark, quite moody, and I'm trying now to lighten it up a bit by sending some sunbeams in from the side. I'm imagining kind of from here and then into the painting. Maybe a little bit here as well, and it can kind of lighten up everything a little bit more. And then the fog can get some shine to it as well. And I mean, awakening doesn't have to be the theme for our launch, for the things that I'm painting now. It doesn't have to be just happy green hobbity landscape. It can be this kind of, it's exactly the mood that we're coming out from now. It's kind of a long and dark and gray winter. And then when the first sunbeams kind of come in and start to warm up the landscape. So a little bit of that might be nice to get into these landscapes this time. We should probably, so if the light hits from here, we should probably have it here as well. So it doesn't have to be a completely detailed, but this layer is probably one of the last layers that I'm going to be painting. So it is important to kind of keep the details in mind as well, because otherwise there's just so much work when I have to go in and do everything again to get the details right. And it might be fun to go in and do a little bit of the fog soon, because now I think we have an idea of where the sun is. I can paint a little bit here as well. And when that idea has been established, it should be more possible to get in a little bit of that light. Let's go there, a little bit here. And then if I just find the right brush here. There we are. I keep using the same brushes for different things, and I can have favorites. I need to wash out the color basically all the time, because I've just used it for something else. Let's see here. All right, and then to trace where the sun will be hitting it, and then I can kind of smooth it out afterwards. You imagine that this fog is here, the sun comes from the side. It's always difficult to break with the usual way I paint. I'm trying to get it to be lighter. It's really, really been a challenge. I always tend to dark contrasts and so on. And then to get everything to be a little bit lighter than I would usually do, it has been much more of a challenge than I thought it would be. But it's always fun to do a little bit of a challenge too, so I always learn a lot when I have to, basically. Let's see. Like that, and just putting the paint where it should be, and then we're going with a different brush to make it behave in the proper way. Let's see, I think I've used this brush here for the fog. I have to clean that too. A little bit of green on it and a bit of white. You just a little bit of the wrong color, and it gets really, really annoying. Let's see. Okay, and then kind of keeping in mind the way that the fog would behave here. So what I'm imagining is that there is a wind coming in from the side and kind of picking the fog up and giving it life. So trying to keep that movement in the painting. I don't want there to be too many colors here, so a lot of the what's going on instead of colors is kind of the movement of the fog. I can smooth out a bit of the greenness here as well. I'm kind of imagining that the fog is being lifted up into the heavens here. Something like this. Can have a little bit of fog on top of this as well. And maybe there should even be fog all the way in the front here. I was thinking of making some more detailed plants and so on, but I kind of like the feel of it being really simple, and the focus is on the energy in the wind and in the mist. And of course we can still do much some more highlights and so on, just so that everything will come out more. It's always good to paint the things a little bit darker than I want it in the end, just to kind of leave room for more highlights. There we are. Okay, so I think we have, well, it's going quite quickly now to kind of see where things should go. So all the trees that don't have highlights, I painted quite a while ago, so they're all dry and I can paint on top of them. Oh, but not on there. So you can see the highlight disappears if I paint on top of it. Something like this. And now that I know where everything is going, it's possible to go in and just to do details. Hi, Poland is here. Welcome to Poland. Nice to have you here. So it's a very small stream. I usually do this on Instagram where there are more people, but I prefer the setup, and maybe eventually we can lure more people over here. But for now, it's a nice, peaceful, quiet little stream. Hopefully some people will see it afterwards. So I try to kind of talk a little bit about what I'm doing and so on, even though I think almost only Poland is here, which is fine. It's it's going to take some time, I think, to establish this stream. But I am glad to have you here. And if there are any suggestions or anything that you would really like to see me doing with the painting, just go ahead and we can see what we can do. So now there's quite a bit of detail work that's still to do. I am Polish, based in Scotland. Well, then we have 2 in 1, which is very good. So I think that means that we can say that we have both Poland and Scotland represented here now. And then we had Germany. I'm not sure, I can't really see. I have 3 people here right now. I mean, since this is the first proper YouTube video live stream here, it's probably a good thing to have it small. And to get used to all of this. So of course we could eventually, there's a lot of detail work going on here, which might not be that interesting. So what might be a good idea is to move on. I think this is basically established, and I think most what is to do here is actually detail work, which isn't that interesting. So I'll get a different book. Let's see here. Which books I have. I primed a few ones. So let's get this one. I'll get a different book. And I love this stream here better than Instagram. Very good. I am very glad that you think so. I prefer it as well. And if people don't discover it, well, hopefully those that should will. So I think something like this, I do have to see it. What I thought is to have a kind of an obscure trees in the background here, quite far away, and far off in the distance, and then we'll kind of light it up. So let's see. Germany is still here, and my username is Finnish, so maybe that counts as well. I absolutely think so. So we have Norway through me, we have Scotland, we have Poland, we have Germany, and we have Finland. I think that is a very good general representation. Now we need somewhere outside of Europe to join as well. Okay. So what I'm thinking is you can have an old, not just one tree, maybe a few different things, and have it kind of merge a little bit with the background. So I need to do this quite with a thin brush. And then we have to go from there. As I said, this is imagination, and I'm not entirely sure what comes afterwards. let's just try. I have a vague idea. Maybe there'll be a sun in here at some point. Is that something? Yeah, you can see that. So I won't make it too detailed in the beginning. Let's get some branches, trunks and stuff down first. And then I'll go in with a different brush. So what I'm thinking is that I kind of have a cove of trees here. And let that merge a little bit with the background. Maybe there'll be some fog. I'm just have to... if I have too much of an idea of what I'm doing, I often repeat things that I've done before. And the best way to kind of break with the things that I've done before is to not have too clear of an idea of what I'm doing. Trying some new things and even doing things that I don't know in which directions they're going to go. Painting things that I think might actually look really strange, and then I can kind of repair it and make it look nicer and into something new. So okay, and then a little vague, kind of a distant color. You'll see what I mean. Let's see here. There. That's a little bit dark, but it might be okay. Something like this, because it's going to be a little bit far off in the distance, and we can light it up and make more details and everything eventually later. Just to have the kind of the background here. And then I think to get some kind of soft sunlight into this grove, and then there can be more shadows and everything added afterwards. So what I'm doing now is just kind of adding the general idea, the general shape of what's going to happen here. And that's going to help me as we progress with the painting. Maybe it's on a hill. So there might be a place for the sun here. I can light this up. And we have a hill here, and maybe some fog coming in. Tusen takk for doing this live stream, Joachim. I am proud half Swede from Boston, United States. Then we finally have more parts of the world represented. Wonderful. I'm glad that you could join as well. So, something like this. We have a hill. Boston, United States. I have never been to Boston, but of course, as all the TV shows and movies that we kind of watch are usually based in the United States, of course, almost any larger city, we do have some idea of what's there, in a way that I think Americans probably don't have of Scandinavia, which, I mean, why would you? Boston, I think the only thing I really know about Boston is that kind of accent, which I think is very, very distinct. Okay, so we have a hill. And let's actually get the sun into the trees and so on right away, and then maybe the sun afterwards. Never mind, stupid idea. Let's get the sun right now. So, it's red here. Exactly, oh, very good. So, something like this. There. So if you get the sun in, it's going to be possible to light up everything else, and you have more of an idea of what's going to happen. What I like to do with the sun is to just get the other colors around it first. So to kind of get orange and then a yellow, and then we can just put the white sun in the middle afterwards. What is nice is I've just put a little layer of paint on top of this. It's dried and then I put a little layer on paint, which means that it's quite easy to kind of distribute the paint out in the painting and kind of making these smooth transitions. There, a little bit of yellow, not much. And then we'll get some white in the middle, and that should kind of radiate out. Like so. Make it a little bit more yellow in the middle as well. So what I want is for this sun, and it doesn't have to be a round shape to it. It can just kind of shine through the fog a little bit. So what I would like in this painting, and I mean, I'm just doing this as I go along, I have it kind of a really soft light, a little light shining through the fog. I have a wicked Boston accent, but also speak Swedish thanks to my Swedish dad and grandparents. Stockholm is my favorite city in the world. Wonderful. I like accents. They really they kind of show where you're from, and I always find it a shame when people try to get rid of their accents. I have quite a strong Norwegian accent in my German as well, and of course in my English. And I've always liked that. And accent. I mean, Boston. Would you say Boston? Well, a dialect. I mean, America. Of course, it's a dialect, I suppose. Yeah. So. I have actually never been to Stockholm. I probably should go at some point. I admire your great talent. Greetings from South Africa. Oh, wonderful. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting much larger parts of the world. We have America, we have Europe well represented, we have Africa now. This is really good. And thank you, Linda. Okay, let's get this light into the painting now. So now we know the light from the sun. And we can start to get the light into the painting, and we can make this really soft hill start to come to life here. So what I really have to avoid is my tendency to go too dark and too strong contrast. So I'm trying to keep this light, and so let's see if this works. Beautiful work that you love the nature themes. Thank you, Cindy. I am glad you like the nature themes because that's really the only theme that I have. The next theme that I will be doing is going to be old growth forests. It's something that I'm really interested in at the moment, and I have discovered that there are still a few actual proper old growth forest, even ancient forest, very small areas, but they're nearby, because there are some huge blocks of stone that was dumped from the ice age. And that meant that no one actually managed to get through there. No one has chopped any wood, lived there, or made any farms or anything like that. You know, some small areas nearby. And my next project is going to be to explore that and bring that much more into the paintings as well. These kind of ancient trees and so on. So lots and lots to explore. But right now, of course, with this launch, it's more about the mood and the colors. I always do try to keep in mind how the trees would work and grow if they were not disturbed by anyone. Meaning that there should be an old tree, there should be younger trees there, it should kind of all all have this generational feel to it, the way an old forest would. I quite like the mood in this painting. Of course, the question is how this is going to go on. Of course, we need more in this painting than just this, but I think not too much. So maybe a little bit of fog, maybe a little bit. What I was thinking, something I really like to do, since it's in these paintings from the imagination, is that to go off of what's already there, which has kind of happened without any intention behind it. So here we have the red, but we have the contours of the darker blue around it. And so what I can do is that I can take the color of the sun and I can just trace some of the contours that I'm seeing here, um, and then creating some clouds. And I don't want this to be too strong. I'm going to obscure it a bit afterwards. So what I'm imagining is that there's kind of a cloud mist cover and the sun shines through and we kind of get these soft shapes in. So it's not like one cloud cover or anything like that, but there are some clouds that are just further in front than others, and so we get these shapes, and I can base that off of the contours that are there. And the question is of course going to be if it's possible to keep the simple feeling here in this painting. Let's see if any of you have seen the things that I usually do. It's usually a lot more contrasty, but let's see if I can keep this kind of a pastel palette. I often find it a bit too boring to not, but I have started to see the value in kind of keeping it a bit more simple. In some ways, that's harder than to have lots of things in the painting. Well, not too much. I've already done a little bit too much here. Let's see if I can save it. Let's see if we can save this. So I did a little bit too much. Let's go over with a bigger brush. I just want some very soft kind of colors here. The nice thing with oil painting is that usually if you make a mistake, you can go in and fix it. So just something like this. Let's remove the stronger things. Maybe there'll be some clouds that we can bring in afterwards. I think I'll leave it like that for now. What I was thinking is, of course, the trees are going to be, we're going to have to do more there. But what I was thinking is maybe get some fog in. So let's get some white. It can be light orange. And we can kind of have just some cloud movement coming in from the side. We can do it a little bit kind of fantasy-ish, I think. It doesn't have to be too... Since there's not that much going on here, it could be nice if this actually has a little bit more life to it. So what I'm imagining is there's this kind of some clouds coming in here and a mist, and then kind of going in. So what, maybe we can make that kind of turn into some clouds over here. But this is the nice thing with kind of painting like this. Things can happen as you go along. So there wasn't really much of an idea going in, but now I'm starting to see what can happen with the painting. So like this, and we can imagine kind of a wind coming in here, and then we can kind of drag the paint along, drag the clouds, create some movement, like so. Kind of having it fall down from here. Maybe there's some heavier air coming here, kind of coming down, and then it's rising up here. Not entirely sure what should be all the way in front of us. Maybe we'll just do some fog here as well. And there could be something growing in the front here. I always like that when painting, to try to imagine what's going on, how the wind is behaving, and so on. And apart from the fact that it's fun to do, it helps knowing what to paint. And it helps when trying to create smaller details as well and making it look at least a little bit realistic. So I think we can obscure it a little bit more. And of course we can go in afterwards and create highlights and so on to see that the sun really shines into it. Now that we have the fog here, we can create a little bit of cloud cover here. Something like this. We'll make this a bit darker to make it stronger contrast. Maybe some really weak little stars up here. I'm getting a little bit into the fantasy theme again that I did last time. But I did say that last time I was probably going to keep a few things from the fantasy theme into my normal paintings because I just had so much fun creating more fantasy landscapes. And this is dark enough that it's not impossible to see some stars, I think, in a landscape like this. But we can obscure the fog a bit more, because that makes it possible to then come in and do highlights afterwards. If everything is just white, it's not possible to make anything stand out. And what I do like is to hide my works, so to make sure that all the lines that are here have to do with the fog and not with the brushwork. Like so. And let's get a few stars in. I would like that. I'm just going to do the same way that I did with the sun here. Well, maybe not orange. A little bit of light yellow and get some small 1, 2, maybe just 3 small stars. Just have a little bit of life up here. Maybe 1 there and 1 more here. Not too strong. It should look at least semi-realistic, but well, I can't have it too simple either. So smooth it out. This is just going to be the shine from the star. Like so, get rid of that. Then we can plop in the stars. Let's see here. There. Tiny little one there. There, we can get rid of something like this. The one up there, one down there. And let's obscure it again. So more and more I'm getting a feel for what I want to do here. I like to follow along when I paint, that at some point you start to get a feel for the mood in the painting and then kind of following that. And I'm starting to feel kind of the dreaminess, I think, that this painting is going to have. And we can just keep enhancing that. Because I really like that. I like the dreamy feeling that this is developing. Wasn't my intention when we started, but now that I see it coming more to life, I think that's what I'm going to go with. You can see it there. You can see the stars a bit more. And then of course let's go in and do details. So let's go in with the liner. I do like very small details, and I'm not gonna sacrifice that for. It can still be a simple painting, and it can still have pastel colors, but I do want tiny little details. It might be a bit to try to make details that aren't too strong. And my painting is still quite wet, so it's always a bit of a challenge to have the right consistency. So the only trees really that grow here are birches and pine. So that's kind of what I'm going with, and I think it's only a pine grove here basically. So we have the old main tree. I have a little bit of problem here. This was a little bit too runny, but we can just make branches out of that. The old main pine here in the middle, and then we have the younger children around it. I mean, yeah, that's not. I keep wanting to make it a lot darker. Is it even possible to see what I'm doing here? Probably. Well, on the computer, maybe you're able to see it. That's another reason, of course, for making it darker. But I'm going to try to resist that urge. And then we can have some old branches without any leaves on it, just in front of the sun here. Let's get. Did I? Yeah, there we are. Like so. And yeah, you can still see everything. I think this is going to be the same as with the other painting, that I'm not going to do all the finest detail in the live stream. I'll just kind of get to the point that we can see how it's going to turn out, and then we can get the next book out. Because I think the more interesting thing is probably the kind of establishing of the painting, and not the tiny detail where you can't really see that anyway. So we have that. I can paint a little bit of of the the needles, of the leaves, in a little bit of a darker color, just so we have an idea of how it's going to look. And then I think a little bit of highlights on the fog, and then I can put this aside and we can go over to the next one. as it does have to be a little bit darker. I can get rid of the fact that it's too dark, but it does need a little bit of contrast, a painting, in order to that thing kind of stand out. But not this much. I'll just use the paint and kind of smear it a little bit out. And then, I mean, it's nice for this to dry anyway before I really paint in the details. Look at this professional YouTube stream. Yes, you see, it worked in the end. Yesterday I was in complete panic. I tried to do this setup on YouTube live because I couldn't figure out how to see it and so on without actually going live. So so it was quite scary and I got really stressed, and then my battery died after 15 minutes. But in the end, we managed to get the setup. I managed to get the setup here, and now this feels very natural. Good evening, and I'm glad that you're joining me here. So I've already painted actually on 2 books and established most of this landscape. The last thing I want to do before we go on to a new book is to paint a little bit of the highlights on the fog, and then we can go on to the next one. Because I realized that just the really tiny details aren't really that interesting. But the highlights I always like to do, and that's something I enjoy showing as well. So let's get some white into the fog here. I'm just going to place the white where it ought to be, and then I'll go back in again with a different brush and smooth it out. Just keeping in mind where the sun is and putting it on top there. This is quite a different painting than the ones I'm usually doing, and I'm quite happy with that. At least it's a little bit different. And let's see if we can keep that going with the next one. There. Like so. Now we'll just smooth that out, and then I'll get going with the next book. I get a lot done in these live streams, much more than you'd think. And probably just because I'm really hyper focused on the painting, and I'm painting the entire time while we're doing this, and trying to actually do something that's at least semi-entertaining. And so it's actually a very productive time for my job as well, because this is something that I would have to do anyway. Smoothing out all of the edges, making it look a bit more natural. And then, as I said, this kind of has to dry a little bit, and then all of the details and so on I won't bore you with. I will do that on my own. So let's get the next book. I can show this a bit more properly, so you can see what, without the shine. This is how it's turned out for now. And then I'll put this away, and let's get the next one. So here we are. So the same with the last one. I've already painted the layer, and now the job is to figure out what should happen here. What kind of a painting is this? As always, I have no idea. I haven't planned this. Something with sun, something light, something that fits into the painting. Maybe some mountains might be nice. I don't have any mountains. I have some flowers. I don't have that many flowers. But maybe, I think a mountain. We'll start with a mountain and see how it goes. But of course, if I'm painting, no. Or maybe an old old tree. I'm gonna have a little sip of my coffee here. So I mean, a tree might be fun. I haven't done a lot of paintings just with one big tree in quite a while. Let's do that. Let's just plant down a tree. Maybe there could be some flowers around it, and we can hit it with the light from the side. That might be nice. So the way that I often like to paint trees, especially if I don't have any plan of how it's going to look, is to just get some brush. Did I leave the brush on the floor somewhere? No, I left it here. And then just painting a line first, and then we'll see kind of where it's going. Can make that a little bit darker than we did with the other one, especially since we want to light it up afterwards. Thought a bird was coming in here. They're looking for nests, and so the swallows are kind of figuring out and looking at every single place. They tried to figure out if they could nest above our entrance door, which I thought was a really bad idea. Okay, so I'm just going to imagine there's kind of a hill here. I'll just have one big tree, but I'm going to start at the top. And I think a large pine. It's going to branch out a bit into the lines here, but that's fine. Because it's wet and there are kind of grooves, so the paint kind of follows it. But I'm just going to use that for branches. And let's make this tree a large tree. Something like this. What about a house in the distance? Linda? Well, the reason there won't be a house is because I don't paint houses. I don't paint animals. I don't paint anything that humans build, do, or are. And that's a rule I'm following very strictly. So, lovely idea, the wrong painter for that idea. I don't paint anything human. I don't paint any animals either. I like to focus simply on the landscape, and that's often a challenge because, of course, if there's a house or an animal, that's often kind of the center of attention. Our eyes naturally wander to animals or humans, but that's why I don't want them there, because I want the focus on the landscape, on nature. So wonderful idea, lovely idea. The wrong painter for that. So it's a little bit annoying that the grooves are filling with this wet paint. I should probably have used a different paint, but I can just make it a little bit thicker. And I'll get a different brush anyway to start making the branches. So the way to make this look like a really big tree is to have lots and lots of branches and have them get really small at the end. So let's see here. So when we're trying to imagine a really old tree, of course, it will have grown in a lot of different ways. I might have the wrong kind of thinner here. If we only use this thinner, which isn't as thick, then maybe it won't be as runny. So with the pine trees, they often look very much, I mean, this is true for any tree, they look very similar when they're young, and I mean, up here they grow really slowly, so they all look really similar until they're around kind of 70, 80, almost to 100 years old. And then the branches start to kind of distinguish themselves and become different. So you can imagine that one of the branches kind of went out here and created its own little thing. Then we have some branches branches down here that catch the light from below. Something like this. Root system can be quite a big one. With the really big trees, you'll often see that they start to kind of they have a corkscrew effect. Pine trees, and we can get that in here as well. That's of course going to come later, but just to remember that there's going to be a corkscrew effect. You can really see that uh, with dead trees here. They often stand for almost 100 years after they're dead, and you can really see the way that the trees have started to curl. Not just a little bit, but they curl completely, and it makes them much stronger in the wind, for instance. So what I'm trying to imagine is that while this might look like a small tree right now, um, if you just imagine that these branches are actually huge, and then we can paint other branches coming out from them, which are smaller, and then more branches coming out from them, and then eventually, the smaller we get, everything else will just look much bigger. So some main stems, and of course a lot of this we can have as deadwood as well. Often with these pines, they start dying from the top. So this might be, so if we do something like this, and this top can already have died off, and they can grow for hundreds of years afterwards, even if the top starts dying. But that's often the way they start dying is from the top down. So you can imagine that this is dead, and I'm going to go in with an even smaller brush and do even more details there. I want to start soon with making some leaves, some needles, but I want to at least establish the main branches and the main way that it's growing. And often, of course, the really old trees kind of has really crazy ways to grow. So let's kind of do something that will look wrong in the start, just when we do it, and then kind of try to explain it and make it look more natural. So just get some paint here. Where do you get this knowledge about trees from? So it's it's all kinds of things, from watching them to videos, from to books. It's just something I'm really interested in, and getting more and more interested in. So I'm going to explore that in my um, the next amount of paintings is going to be ancient forests. It's something that we've kind of lost, because most of our forests are not ancient forests anymore, so most of us don't really see trees that are more than 150 years old. But there are a few here, and there's some excellent, there are some books and things about it as well. Um, and the more I know about it, the more I can paint the way that a forest should look. So I try to learn as much as I can about it. I am not a biologist, so a lot of the things that I say might be wrong, but I do try to get knowledge from biologists and people that actually know what they're talking about. And then we actually have quite a lot of really old forest here, so where I can learn more. So let's see if we have. Yeah, I really like that, and I want to do so much more of it. I would like to paint much more kind of ancient forests, and get people to care more about them, because a lot of people just don't know that the forests that they walk in and are actually, first of all, plantations. Like most forests, even in Norway, a lot of people think that, oh, it's so wild here, but actually less than 0.5% of the forest in Norway is actually ancient forest. And even old growth forest is just a few percentage. And most of it has been chopped down very recently and it's actually been planted. So you'll just see all the trees. Uh, if you're in the forest and you see that all the trees are the same age, for instance, it's a planted forest, or at least it's all chopped down at the same time. And that is not how a natural forest ought to look. Um, and the more you learn about how the forest should look and actually looks in its natural form, the more you appreciate the fact that an ancient forest has a completely different feel to it. There's so much more life. The dead trees are all still there. A pioneer forest, which is the first forest that come after something has been chopped down or burned down or something like this, will be just one kind of tree often, or just a certain kind of tree, and it needs to go through the entire stage of the pioneer trees for other trees to start coming. And so an old growth forest will just have so much more life to it, um, so much more going on, so many more species of moss and mushroom and small animals, too small that we can even see, but you can feel it. You can feel it when the forest isn't stressed. You can feel it when everything is where it should be. It can take hundreds of years for the kind of the 100-year droughts to strike, and the trees that are in the kind of the wrong spot to kind of will die off. And in a really really old forest, you'll see that a certain kind of tree grows at a certain place close to the river, and then the other trees grow where it's drier, and you just get such a different feeling in forests like that. And I really want to explore that so much more. But it did. I needed to find old growth forests, ancient forests, and as I said before, there are some here because there's this particular phenomena in Norway where the glacier has picked up a lot of rocks in the ice age 10,000 years ago and then dropped them over an area. And that area is so full of stones that no one has been able to get there and chop the forest down. Even 100, 200, 300 years ago in Europe, especially, there was actually much more, even more chopped down than there is now because people use forest for firewood as well. So, but there they couldn't get to, and especially here, almost no one lived here. So there you actually have an old growth forest and ancient forests, and I'm going to film about that, and I'm going to show that much more in what I paint. So that's a very long speech about the thing that interests me at the moment and has interested me for a very long time, and that's that this theme of our forests and the state that they're in, and to get people to appreciate how an actual forest should look. We can't save and preserve something that we don't know exists. And if most people don't actually know that the forest isn't the way that it should be, then we're not going to save it. We're not going to preserve those parts that are still ancient. And hopefully, if I can, in my paintings, transport this feeling of ancient forests, maybe I can do my part. And quite a part of that, since I'm painting from imagination, I need to know how they work. That's one of the lovely things I think about painting from. Hi, Color. Yes, I finally did a YouTube live. I have figured out how it works. This is the setup, and I have migrated over to YouTube. There won't be as many people here, but actually, I'm quite happy with this amount for now. And YouTube is actually a much better place to have a live stream than Instagram. I can have it in the right way, and I'm really happy about that. So I am talking about ancient forests, and painting more of that. And I know that Kalle has that as well. He keeps seeing all of the wood companies chopping down the forests around them. And I'm talking about the fact that almost none of us actually knows how an ancient forest should look, and are not aware that most of us, even if we live far off in nature, live in planted plantations. So, yeah, so for me to be able to paint ancient forests, I need to learn how they work, how they should actually look. And that's the project for the time the time ahead. Um, I actually thought that the national park we have here is an ancient forest. It turns out that much of it was chopped down. But as I said, we do have a few areas close by here that has ancient forest, and I will explore it, and hopefully I can take you guys along and take a look at it. So what we're doing here is we're painting an old tree, very much inspired by the fact that we have so many old ancient trees growing around here. So I'm finally getting a little bit more of a grasp of how extremely different the normal trees that I'm used to here, the pine trees, look when they get to be 400-500 years old. And that's much more like this. Usually they kind of start with just a straight stem, and then with time, lots and lots of time, they start to look very different. So we can leave this like this for now. I wanted to have the sun come in from the side. So let's get a different color. And let's get the sun come in. I always make the sun in the middle of the painting, but let's not do that now. Let's imagine that the sun is over here. And let's get the color of the sun. I have the sun from the other painting that I was doing. Let's get the color of the sun in here. And let's just trace it first. Of course, I'm going to do some needles, some leaves on top of the tree, but I really want to have the sun into it. I want to get the feeling of how the landscape is going to look. As I said, it's from imagination, and I need to have an idea of how it's going to look. And I think the sun should be the main part here. I really want this contrast of the kind of the tree on the hill with the sun shining on it. So what I'm basically doing is I'm kind of mixing the themes. So this theme should be kind of a spring awakening. The next one is going to be ancient forest, but I'm doing a little sneak peek here and doing an ancient tree in the sun. Of course, if I'm doing this, the sun is now here. If you want it to be more here, I'm gonna have to have more sun in the middle of the tree as well. Now let's see, something like this. What I'm thinking is that it hits the hill. A lot of this is just preliminary, and I'm going to come back afterwards and figure out exactly how it's going to look. But the more information I have, the easier it is to continue. So we have the sun come here, it can even hit over here, here. And we get this turn from the tree. As I said, the trees corkscrew with time, and the older they get, and if you imagine that this tree might be about 400 years, in this area they ought to live, if they get to have a natural life, they should kind of grow to be 400 or 500 years old. Crazy how with a few paint stroke the tree is sunlit. Yeah, I love that effect. That is one of my absolutely favorite things to do with painting, is to have the thing that I'm painting and then get the sun in, because it makes such a strong effect, and so easily, so quickly. Of course, the difficult thing is then you have to trace every single branch. I'm not going to trace every one right now because there's still quite a lot of things to do. There's still there's of course the question if there even should be any leaves on this. Maybe a few, but I'm starting to think that this might be, if we said that it's really old, if it's kind of approaching 500-600 years, and it's starting to die, then actually most of it might be dry and dying. And I think that might actually be the case here, because I don't want to clad this too much now, because I kind of like the shape of it. So what we can do instead of getting too many leaves, I'm going to do a few into it and we can see how that looks. But instead of doing that, we can just add tons and tons and tons of branches. Not too many. I mean, once they're dead, it's not there aren't necessarily as many as you would say have with a birch that's just lost its leaves. But there will still be quite a lot. Of course, there should be more going on. Do you ever mess up your paintings? Because I've never seen you make a mistake. If so, I make a lot of mistakes, but you might not notice it. When I paint all the time, I keep making mistakes. I just use them and create something off of them. So, for instance, if I do something like this, then I'll just I will just make a branch out of it. There are much worse ways to mess up. I haven't done any of those live. That means, for instance, if I paint a second layer, if I painted a layer on top of this and then you do a stroke and you just move the entire painting because it wasn't as dry as you thought, I've destroyed countless of paintings like that. But that's the lovely thing of painting landscapes instead of painting like humans or houses. Things aren't straight and so on, so it's much easier to to just go with it and create something off of your mistakes. So there's rarely any mistake that is made that can't be turned into something that actually works. I think probably portrait painters probably have it the worst, because just a tiny mistake can create a completely different personality or something like that. But as a landscape painter, and as someone who doesn't paint from a reference photo, so no one will ever know that it didn't turn out the way I thought it would, that helps. Hard to add an extra nose to... Yes, exactly. So if you suddenly made a mistake, oh, it would be lovely with a third eyebrow or something, that probably doesn't work. But with landscapes painted from imagination, there's usually something you can do. Sometimes I made flowers into mountains, and I mean, there's always something. Or summer into winter. But of course, there are mistakes that you can do that just really completely destroy the painting. But it's a long time since I've done anything like that, thankfully. Something that, of course, you can do is if you paint a little bit of green into your sky or something like that, that can really be a disaster, and you have to figure out something else. Okay, so what I thought I would do here is let's just go a little bit crazy and just paint lots and lots and lots of little branches everywhere. Just to make this look older. I think what we can do as well is to start adding moss to it. And I keep having to remember that this isn't a birch, so you can have branches, they kind of grow in a very different way here. So kind of 1, 2, 3, it doesn't have to be as regular, especially if a lot of this tree is already dead. Then it's not very regular at all, and you can have kind of lots of dead branches just kind of sticking out. This is important too, to get this feeling of the really old painting, this really old tree, is to have lots and lots of branches that kind of just stop. Turning flowers into mountains sounds like a philosophical book or something. Well, it could be. Absolutely, it's a way of being in the world, I suppose. Going with what's happening, not resisting if things want to go in a different direction than what you had intended. Thank you, Joachim. The fluidity of your painting is so lovely. The beauty of your imagination is wonderful. Thank you, Misty. And that was really beautiful. Thank you. So, of course, an issue now is we have the tree. There's much more to do on the tree, of course, and we can still. I think there's quite a bit of contrast to do, so we can paint in black on the other side. Maybe we'll do a little bit of that right now. I like that effect. So what I'm going to do is to start painting in the shade. So we're painted in the light on one side, and now we can paint in the shade on the other one. The shade I'm going to use is dark purple. Shade of anything is hardly ever black. But purple and blue is a very usual shade, and especially purple on these kind of trees. So just on the other side, we'll start painting in a much darker shade. And I am just going to trace the tree first and where I want it to be darker. Then you can go in with a different brush afterwards and smooth it out and make it look more realistic. But when we paint in the shade, we can make everything more three-dimensional as well. And it ought to happen pretty quickly that it'll look more three-dimensional. It's difficult. I only speak English now in live streams and in videos, and so it's kind of disappearing on me. And then we can make it even clearer that we have this corkscrew effect here on the tree. So as I said, I'm going to go in with a different brush afterwards, so it doesn't have to be as smooth out as it's going to be. It's more about putting it in the right place first, and then kind of having it available for a different brush and different kind of strokes. And that's kind of a thing to remember as well when you paint trees like this, is that you're going to have to paint on top of it a lot. So there might be a limit to how many branches. Sometimes this is easier, of course. I have one tree and it's I have a good overview. Sometimes I painted the kind of the outline of like 10 trees like this with tons and tons of branches, quite forgetting that I'm going to have to go back and paint in the sun and then paint in the shade and so on again and again and again, and you just go a bit crazy, which is one of the reasons why while I do love really large paintings like the one I have behind me here, I like the focus of a painting like this, like the smaller ones, because I can paint a lot more details into something like this. With a really large painting, you have to cheat a little bit because you just can't spend this amount of energy on every single tree. So if we get the lines in here, of course the question is going to be what are we going to do with the rest of the painting? And I have no idea. I mean, we made some stars and stuff in the other one. I think that might be a bit strange here, even though it is evening. The sun is hitting it from here. I did consider maybe to make some flowers kind of grow around it, but I think it's going to be easier once the tree is a bit further along to figure out what is going to happen here. Still a lot to do with the tree. I'm going to just concentrate on that first. But I don't want it to be only the tree. So there should be more going on. And of course, this is not actually the Ancient Forest launch. This is the Awakening Spring launch, which means that I should probably make some flowers or something around it. Let's see. I haven't quite decided that. It's been so lovely now to have spring finally arriving. Believe it or not, we still don't have any leaves on the trees outside. Color's still there. He probably has the same experience. There was snow not very long ago, just a few days ago. But now it's the first day, which is really, really warm, and the leaves are actually starting to come out. Hopefully, that's going to inspire me to be able to paint the paintings a little bit lighter. But this keeps happening. I have the idea of painting a really light painting, and then it veers off into this very different mood. That's just how it is. I'll have to figure out some way of enlivening it. Now this, I'm painting wet in wet at the moment, which means that it's quite runny, and it does have to dry a little bit before I can really paint in more details. And as with the last time, I'm not going to paint in all of the details here in the live stream. Perhaps we'll even move on to another book. Painted on 2 books now, and I still have another one that I haven't painted anything on, even though most of the books are actually started now. So now at least we have our tree. I am not sure what to do with the rest of the painting. Trying to consider it now. Not at all sure. Maybe we'll just want to let this sit, and I'll get a different book. And I did want to have. Let's get a different book now. I have one here. I'm just gonna do something like this, and you can see how the tree, there we are, turned out. And I'm gonna get this away, and we'll put on a different book. What I thought we might want to do here is, so, Awakening launch, spring, light colors, kind of some meadow. Some mountains in the background, and then a spring meadow with some spring flowers, or summer flowers, something like that. I'm gonna get some brown, little orangey brown mountains into the background first. Let's see if you guys can see it. I'm just gonna get some little bit of shape into them. Maybe there can be a mountain stream coming down. Maybe not too far away either, so we can even have some trees that we can see here. It's gonna do a little bit obscure mountains, and then we can kind of have the landscape. So if we have a mountain stream coming down here, something like this, and we have the landscape, something like that. And I have some flowers that I really, really love. Kind of some purple, pink flowers here that I think might be nice. Or we could do the Norwegian fireweed, which is it's a lovely pink color as well. Let's see. I'm not entirely sure about that. But these mountains can be quite far in the distance. Hello from Germany. Hello to you. And we have our second. I don't know. I've kind of lost count where everyone's from now. But I think Germany is probably one of the more popular places. Of course, it's. I mean, from Lena's channel and so on. Oh, greetings. Oh, it's wonderful that you guys starting to know each other here. From Ivan, okay. And it's actually seemed that we have more people in YouTube Live than I thought we might, which is wonderful. I was a little bit afraid that I was going to do the entire live stream completely on my own here, since it's not on Instagram, but it seems that you guys are finding me here, which I think is really nice. Something like this. Of course, the sky, I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen there. maybe some orange clouds or something. Just get rid of that here. But I think some purple flowers might be nice here. Let's get down some kind of a mountain stream. Like that. There, I mean, there can be rapids here. I just want to have the general shape of it. It can come from there. And then we have the kind of sides of the mountain here. And then, of course, if we want the flowers to be quite close, then we need to cross this. And maybe we'll start with the flowers so that we have an idea of the rest of the painting. Trying to think if I can remember how Norwegian fireweed looks. I am discovering that I have been painting on this live stream for 1.5 hours already, and maybe it's time to end it, or but I'm not sure about that. I mean, it's nice. I seem to still have a little bit of battery left here. How does it look? So it has one stem. I'm just gonna try to paint it with the liner and see if I can remember how it looks. And I'll paint it in a kind of a purple color first. So it grows on, it's just one stem. I'm pretty sure that I remember that right. And of course there can be other stems that come out, but mainly there's one, well, maybe it should be purple, maybe it should just be green. So there's like one stem, and the flowers, they start flowering. It's always a lovely plant to look at, because you can kind of time the season and the year from where the flowers are. I think they start flowering from the bottom or the top. Oh god, this is the problem with painting from memory. It's trying to figure out how did they look. But I know that the leaves, it's starting to come back to me. So we have the leaves look like, this is the wrong brush for these kinds of leaves. I know that the leaves, they come out like this from the main stem, and they grow out unevenly. And I'm not going to do it too detailed now. I just want to have an idea, and we can have a few different ones come out here. And let's get the flower. Let's paint the flower and then see if it even works. If I can remember how they look. I can see the stems here from last year, but of course they're all brown. They have a really lovely color to them, kind of reddish purple, pink basically. And it should be something like, we're gonna have a few much more closer ones. Maybe here on this side. And then they come out from the stem. Oh, trying to remember. And then they kind of create these large beans, kind of where the seeds are once they're done flowering. But I know that. All right, okay, it's coming back to me. I mean, the very small details I'm still having a little bit of trouble remembering. But the flowers, I think they come right out of the stem, and they end up looking something like this. Yes, and then at the very top, they grow from the bottom. On the bottom, the first flowers come out, and then on the top, you kind of have the shoots. They still hasn't flowered, so this will be kind of early autumn, midsummer, and you have the larger flowers on the bottom here. There we are. Yes, yes, there we are. And this could be nice. So we can have a fireweed um, meadow, fireweed valley, basically. So I'll go in and do more details, but as with the other painting, I'm just going to start with kind of the general idea so that I kind of know how it's going to look. And I can use the liner to paint the stems. What I do want is I want a few of them to be a lot closer. So what we can do is we can make a little hill here. And this can be closer. So we'll have a few stones, something like this. And the river is just far off in the distance. We can just imagine that it kind of stops and it kind of keeps running. So we're looking from the top down. And we have a hill here which is closer than that. That we can do with lines. So if we have this darker, for instance, then it's easier to see that this is closer than that. And then we'll have some bigger plants on the top here. So like that, and there we are. And then we can have a few larger ones go here. Something like this. And then I'll just paint the flower to get the right size, because that's what I want to do here, and everything else I can kind of correct. Is that the right brush for this? Maybe. So I know that the leaves, I think they have 4 leaves. If not, then at least these have 4 leaves. 4 or 5. And they grow out like that. And of course we'll do highlights and everything else afterwards. Now it's more just establishing where everything should be. This is much too red. And kind of getting some of the colors down and so on. And we can imagine that it goes all the way up here. And these flowers haven't sprouted yet. Haven't, what is it called? Well, they haven't flowered yet. And here they're just starting. So this is what I mean with you can see kind of when you are in the season. They start here, midsummer, and then late autumn, it's just a few flowers on the top here. So this is my version of Norwegian fireweed. It's a lovely plant, you can make tea of it. Hi Joachim, from sunny UK, you are such an inspiration. I also glass paint, oh wonderful. Nice to see you in alive, much love. Thank you, Nathaniel. I am sure that we will soon make a glass painting live stream too. It would be wonderful to have you here then. I have lots and lots of glasses that I'm painting at the moment. So it would be fun to have a fellow glass painter along when I get back into that. All of these colors are glass painting colors. So now I just need to paint a bit on the books so that they can dry, but I have lots and lots to do with glass painting. So we'll be continuing that very soon. Would be nice, of course, to do glass painting when it's a bit darker, so maybe quite late in the evening, and we can have the candle inside, and we can have it here. Not entirely sure if the setup works, but I'm sure I'll figure out something. That's something I do love with glass painting. It's just such a cozy thing to do with the light and everything. I'm just going to get a little bit of the color. We can just imagine that might even be on the other side of the plant. And then like here, I am going to do this much more detailed later, but I just want to know where things are going to be. And I think here, that might be okay, or we might not. Well, that might be okay. I do know I want this to be that color. And here. And of course we can do some down in the valley as well, but I still need to establish that before I can start painting on it. I agree with you. I do most of my painting in the evening, better light, absolutely. So I like to paint on my glasses in the day as well, so I know how they look in the day, but then especially with the finer work and so on, it really, there's no way to know how it's going to look if you don't paint it when it's darker with the light inside. That's the thing with glass painting, of course, there's quite a lot more to think about than there is with oil painting because of these different ways of looking at it. So it needs to look well when it's completely dark and you can only see the contrasts. And then it needs to look good when the light is from outside and there's no light in it and you can just see the colors. So there's quite a lot to think about with glass painting. And in some, I always, when I paint with oil like I do now, after I painted a lot on glass or porcelain, it just seems so easy because everything I'm doing here is going to stay this way, while with glass and porcelain, of course, everything kind of changes once you burnt it in the kiln. I learned how to do that from you. Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful to hear. Of course, a lot of the that's lovely. A lot of the people that follow and things that I might be inspiring, I have no idea about. It's wonderful to hear. I'm already, the glass painting has actually been a little bit of a challenge now because we have, I mean, it's so light. The sun is still out. It's, what time is it? It's 10 to 9, which means that the sun isn't going down for like 2 hours yet. Which means that it's basically never dark. I have considered moving into a little room next to me here where I can make it completely dark. But everything is here, so it's difficult to move it. But basically I probably just need to be awake a lot longer to get that. And especially when I engrave the glasses, as I have started to do, that really needs to be dark because the entire point of engraving a camera glass is that you can see the light better. Actually, my new engraving tool might actually be silent enough that we could do that live, even though it's quite loud. It's just it's really fun thing to show. It's a really fun process to do. Or maybe I'll try to do an engraving live. So something like this. And I think I have an idea at least how this is going to turn out. Whew. Sometimes I paint things when I just have really no idea where it's going, so it's going to be difficult. I use PBO 160 paints first in a domestic oven as I do not have a kiln, so it was a challenge to paint motifs with these paints. I can imagine. I have never tried those paints. They are a bit different, I think. Um, so I have no idea how those are. I fire it in a kiln, but of course that's not something everyone has access to. And I think that the paints that you fire on in 160 don't change as much as the glass paints. I'm not sure about that. I know the paints that I use, they don't change as much as traditional porcelain paint, but they're still get a lot weaker, for instance, when you fire it. So you have to keep firing it and firing it. I did manage to melt a few glasses here the other day, which was quite awful. I have a new kiln, and I forgot that I had glasses in it and fired and fired it at a too high a level because I also have porcelain paint that I need to fire, and I fired it at that temperature, which means that when I opened the kiln, I had melted about 8 glasses completely. They were just puddles of glass, which is probably something you don't have to worry about and be happy about that because that was not fun, especially having to clean out the kiln. But thankfully, I have about 40 glasses that I'm working on, so it wasn't as big of a tragedy as it could have been. I've only done that once before, and it's a few years ago when I melted even more glasses in my oven. I should probably have 2 kilns, but that's too expensive at the moment. That really haunts me. So what I thought is maybe some clouds into the painting here. So there are a lot of things that are problems with glass painting, which is not a problem when I paint on oil. So it's sometimes it's a nice change. But now that we're talking about it, I am looking forward to painting a little bit more. I painted this morning on glass already. So in about 2 weeks' time, we have a new opening where these books are going to be a part of, and glasses and porcelain. So I have lots and lots and lots to paint at the moment and to do. So a little bit something like this. Of course, a lot of the things that I'm doing now is just kind of preliminary work, and I'm gonna have to go in later and kind of make the details and so on. This kind of just establishes the main painting. Yes, correct. They don't change color much, but to add layers has to be done lightly, as can interfere with the previous layers. Oh, as there's only one firing. Oh, right. Oh, that is different. That is one of the things that I really do love about the firing process in a kiln is that once you've fired it at 600 degrees, the paint is completely stuck to the glass, and you can just behave as just completely trust that it stays on. But if you have to be more careful there, I can imagine that it's actually more like oil painting than perhaps the techniques that I use. So if you have the orange light there, we can imagine, I have no idea where it's coming from, but we can imagine it's coming kind of from somewhere here. So let's add that to the mountains. Have kind of an evening color effect here. I have to make sure that my battery isn't dying. It probably should be dying soon. We have been going here for how long? 103 minutes, and that's quite a while. That's probably starting to tax my battery. But we have managed, well, I have, and I like to think that you are helping me in spirit. I've managed to do quite a lot in this live stream. I'm painted on 1, 2, 3, 4 established newly 3 books. So it's been incredibly productive actually. And yeah, let's I think a goal might be to actually have one of the maybe the next live stream be on candle glass, and see if I can make that work with this setup. Might be nice. There, we can have the light come into the valley. Something like this. All right, I think this is it for now. I think I need a little break. Thank you all for joining me here in this live stream. It's been fun. It's definitely something I'll be doing much more of, and of course in the weekends. And I can let everyone know a little bit beforehand This was quite spontaneous, and I didn't know if it was going to work properly. But now that I do, I think I'm going to have quite a lot more of these live streams. Would be cool to see the process with the kiln in a stream or a video. Absolutely. I did make a video. One of the last videos I did show with the kiln how I paint on candle glasses. So that is on YouTube, and you can see how I work with the kiln. But I'll be talking more about that in my next video as well. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining here, and I hope to see you in the next live stream. It's been a lot of fun, and until next time. So goodbye for now.